Hi, Spencer. Thanks for joining me again on the Western Canon Podcast.
Hi, Jordan. It's a pleasure. Great to be back.
Excellent. So, in this podcast, we're approaching that point where we're going to be discussing Greek philosophy for a while. We'll probably do 6 episodes altogether. We'll do the pre-Socratics, we'll do Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and I may even do a short episode on Epicurus. One of the things that I've become fascinated by is I listen to people like your dad, Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, and others, is how Greek philosophy fits into the story of Christianity. Now, your dad often talks about Aristotle. I listen to him all the time. He talks about virtue and the logos and these things, but he rarely mentions Plato. And so the first person I thought of to satisfy my curiosity was you. You are a scholar of the classics, ancient Greek music and poetry and history and philosophy, and you're also a Christian. So that makes you a rare breed in academia these days. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I actually studied philosophy. So the classics, this is kind of a new project for me, but I actually studied philosophy. My area of expertise was normative ethics, Descartes, Hume, Berkeley, Locke, Kant, the German idealists. I liked Buddhism and Nietzsche. Ancient Greek philosophy is not foreign to me. I know quite a bit about it. But I don't know a lot about Christian theology or Christian thought. I'm on kind of a kick lately, though, and I'm just desperate to learn anything that I can. Christian philosophy, in many ways, is completely new to me, and I've been wanting to learn more. So the topic of today's discussion is Plato and Christianity. I wanted to start by asking, if you don't mind, are you a Christian, Spencer? You are a Christian, and what type of Christian are you?
Yeah, I am indeed a Christian. I was baptized at the age of 18, just before I left for college, left home for college. And that was the result, I would say, in terms of the conscious process, at least, that was the result of about 4 years from the age of 14 onward of reflection and experience, a number of kind of personal developments in my own life. I wasn't raised in a Christian setting. My father, as you'll know from listening to his show, is a convert from Judaism, and at the time I was born, had effectively left that tradition behind. And so my own conversion took place over a number of years. I was baptized into the Episcopal Church, which was at the time within the Anglican Communion.
Mm-hmm.
And I now practice within the Church of England. I live here in Oxford. I'm studying and teaching here in Oxford, and the Church of England is the national church, and it's also part of the Anglican Communion. So that's where I worship now.
So why not Judaism? I was raised Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed. I had the long Torah portion of Chaye Sarah, and so I went to a Jewish day school and had to learn Hebrew and all of this. Why not Judaism? And I know your father is a convert from kind of secular Judaism.
That's right.
And I have not read The Great Good Thing, but I want to. It'll probably be the next thing I read. Why not Judaism?
Sure. Well, I can recommend The Great Good Thing. It has a lot of sort of discussion on this topic from my father's perspective. For my own part, unlike you, I wasn't raised in any sort of tradition. And so effectively what I ended up doing when I was at around the age of 14, what I came to realize was that even though I had never been raised religious, I had always effectively believed in God. That is to say, as soon as there was a kind of question raised intellectually, was there a creator of this universe? Is it guided by some sort of intellect or consciousness? Instinctively, I knew that my answer was yes, and that had to do with just a long-lived, felt presence of some kind of consciousness within the whole of the universe. And being a bit of a bookish sort, this will tell you a lot about what my life was like at 14. Instead of going to a human being and talking about this, or reaching out to a trusted friend, I set myself a reading course, something somewhat akin to what you're doing with the podcast. Really, I said I'm going to read every scriptural text of every major tradition that I can get my hands on. So over the course of those 2 years, between the ages of 14 and 16, I worked my way through, let me see if I can remember the list. It was the Bible, which includes, the Hebrew Bible, so the Torah, and also the New Testament, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, and a little bit of Buddhist work as well. And so effectively what I was doing was I was trying to put a name and an intellectual framework onto this felt sense that I had that there was a divine consciousness animating the world. And it's very, very difficult to articulate what, if anything, sort of ends up causing one to plunk for a certain faith. I think ultimately faith is something that engages the mind, the heart, the self, the entire person. And so there are a number of different sort of experiences and encounters throughout one's life that, might convince one intellectually, but then one might sort of need intellectually, I was comfortable with the idea of a creator. Really, it came down to the question of where did I meet this character, this person that I felt I had sort of met throughout the universe, and in the world in my own life. I'm told as a child, this is in my dad's memoir actually, that as a kid, I once walked outside and thanked the sun for shining on me. And that's always been kind of my sense, is that I'm in this kind of dialogue with someone. And effectively, over the course of reading the Bible, although I felt that I was, intellectually engaged and philosophically stimulated by all of these traditions, it was in reading the Bible that I felt as if I was coming home, as if I was meeting or re-meeting somebody that I already knew. And that was a sort of a person and a consciousness that's revealed first in the Bible through the historical interactions of the Jewish people with their God, with Adonai or Yud-He-Vav-He, might go however you want to name the Jewish God. And I believe that is the same God who then took on flesh and was manifested in the person of Jesus Christ, who was an actual dude who walked around and lived and did stuff and talked to people, and then died and was resurrected from the dead. And so it was actually a sense of continuity between my own experience, the God revealed in history throughout the Hebrew Bible, and the person of Christ revealed in the New Testament, that meant I couldn't stop, I guess, at accepting the Hebrew Bible, but also became a Christian and named Christ as God as well.
And then maybe you read C.S. Lewis. Did you read other writers that commented on top of that tradition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody who engages seriously with sort of religious intellection has to spend a lot of time with older and better thinkers. Lewis is a huge influence upon me. So is Chesterton, another writer sort of in that same vein of you might call them sort of hail fellow well-met British theologian philosophers. Who else? A.W. Tozer is somebody who, once I was already a Christian, I read a great deal of, and he's again a person who engages the reader on all three of those fronts, on the kind of the saying of Christ on this is, you shall love the Lord your God, and he's actually quoting the Torah here. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. And I think that I look for writers who sort of speak to all three of those parts of the human person.
Well, that sounds like Plato right there. The spirited and the reasoning intellect and maybe the appetitive. I don't know how that fits in. That's probably sinful.
The famous tripartite soul. This is something people kind of get themselves tied in knots about, whether this is always something Plato believes or something he starts out with and really articulates in the Republic and then later on abandons in the Laws. But it's kind of interesting that in a number of traditions, whenever people start to sort of sit around and think about what is the universe and also what is the human being, what is the human person, they often end up with these kind of tripartite, three-part people. And one of the funny things about Christianity is, one of the most famously complicated and convoluted and difficult Christian doctrines is the doctrine of the Trinity. How can we talk about God as three people and one person at the same time? How can we say there are three? Aren't we being polytheists if we say there are three gods? But one of the funny things about the way Jesus talks about that is, I mentioned, love the Lord your God with your heart, mind, and soul. He talks to us as if we're three things in one, right? And basically what the Trinity is a way of understanding that tripartiteness in us as an image of God, of God's being three things. And usually in Plato, it comes down to the logos, the sort of reasoning, intellectual thinking part, the thumos, which does something to do with desiring, passions, urges, impulses. And then there's the kind of just appetitive, I think you call it appetitive, the part that just kind of gets hungry, for example, and has this almost the natural part of the soul. And those three parts get variously described. Sometimes it's a charioteer and two horses. Sometimes it's a puppet pulled by different strings. And he has all these different images for it. But those are the three that kind of keep coming back up.